Motivation, I find, is a very fickle thing. We allow ourselves to wallow in it. We can drum it up into becoming the biggest thing in the world. But it's also been my experience that more often than not, we can flick a switch in our brain and the thing that we thought was horrible and depressing and demotivating actually isn't. Hey guys, welcome back to the StoryLearning podcast. This is the podcast where we talk all about language learning, and I try to use some of the stuff that I've learned over the years from learning over 10 languages and teaching languages to millions of people around the world to help you with your language learning exploits and escapades. Now today we've got a really difficult question that I feel a lot of sympathy for, and so I'm going to try my best to help you out. And it relates to how you can learn a language when you really don't want to and you have no motivation whatsoever. So the first question here comes from Angelantics Just Me, or Angelantics Just Me. And she says, have you done a video on people who don't want to learn a language and aren't motivated, but have to learn, and how to help them? And another one from U Fever, who says, what if there is no motivation? What if you are struggling to survive and trying not to get fired? All right, so we're going in deep. It's going in heavy right from the beginning. And look, I taught languages for many years. I taught English for 5 years in Asia, in the Middle East. And I have met a lot of students who had to learn English because they needed it for their job, right? These were people who worked in companies. They really didn't care about English. They were perfectly happy sort of just speaking in their own language, but they wanted their job. They wanted to keep their job. They were expected to speak English, but it kind of terrified them. Like, they really didn't want to have to speak on the phone. They were nervous in meetings. They had no desire to learn, but they had to. So I can, even though Angela and you, Fever, I don't know you, but I can imagine myself looking right into your eyes and understanding the situation you're in, right? Because I've spent years with students who were in a similar situation, and it's really, really tricky. But I think I'll be able to help you here a little bit, or at least I'm going to try my best. And I will start off by saying that I myself have never particularly enjoyed the language learning process. I'm not a big study fan. I don't like the process of learning a language, believe it or not. I like having learned it and being able to use it. And for me, the motivation of actually using the language and speaking it is what keeps me going and what gives me the motivation. All right. And a big part of what I'm going to say to you today is that it's okay not to be motivated, but if it's important to us, then we need to be able to do the minimum number of things, the minimum amount that's going to get us the results in spite of not wanting to. And as a quick starting point here, I'm going to recommend a list of TV shows and podcasts in different languages that I think might help you. I've put together this, it's called my most binge-worthy resources, and these are TV shows, the podcasts, and I think we have this in 15 different languages. It's my favorite stuff, and my favorite stuff from everyone on the StoryLearning team. We've kind of combined all of our favorite shows of different kinds, which we think are not only binge-worthy, meaning you're going to want to keep listening to them or watching them, but they're also really, really good for language learning. You'll see why this is important later, but you might like to grab a copy of that. It's completely free. There's a link in the description. Get yourself a copy of that, and you'll see why in just a minute when I start telling you about the things I think you can do to help yourself even when you don't want to. All right. Now, there's a paradigm that's often spoken about, which I'm not sure is true, but it's kind of a useful starting off point, a useful springboard for this topic. And that is the difference, or the delineation between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And the idea here is, and it's kind of a caricature, I think, but if you're extrinsically motivated, you're doing it for an outside reason. You want the money, you want the praise, you want to avoid punishment or something. Like, that's extrinsic motivation. It's out of you. And then there's intrinsic motivation, which is something that you want to do for its own sake, right? So you want to be healthy so that you don't die, for example, right? Is that extrinsic? Yeah, but whatever. I don't know, but you've decided that you want to do it for yourself, right? You study a language because you want to be a better person, not because your boss is telling you, right? Now, in reality, I don't think we're ever kind of like wholly extrinsically motivated or wholly intrinsically motivated. I think reality is always a lot more complex than that. right? I can do something because I want to look good, but I can also see value and appreciate value in the process, right? All of those things can all be true. But it's useful to think about it in those terms because there is ample evidence that doing things for the wrong reasons can backfire, right? So for example, a purely extrinsic motivator would be pay or salary, right? And take performance-related pay, for example. There have been many experiments that have shown that very high rewards, meaning higher pay, lead to poorer performance in tasks requiring cognitive skills, right? So the more that you are doing something for an external reason, like more money, the poorer you are going to perform when you need to use your brain, right? But there are also studies that show that high pressure situations, especially those related to kind of work and the classic extrinsic stuff, sap your working memory. And your working memory is the thing that lets you store and manipulate things that you need for cognitive tasks like language learning, right? So essentially, the more that you're doing stuff for outside reasons and you're putting yourself under pressure for those reasons, the less well you are going to perform in cognitive areas, right? The corollary of that obviously being that the more that you're doing stuff for its own sake, for pleasure, for your own benefit, the higher cognitive function you're going to have. So your motivation for these things does actually matter. And so when it comes to what to do about this stuff, ideally, the ideal situation here is that we take this thing that you really don't want to do, the language that you're learning because you have to perform well at work and you don't want to lose your job, the language that you have to learn for study so that you can get into the university you want to go to, whatever it may be. If we can find a way to flip that motivation from extrinsic into intrinsic, then that is going to kill every single bird with one single stone, okay? And so this is why I gave you this list of binge-worthy TV and podcast resources earlier, right? Because if you can find a TV show, like recently I've been watching all these TV shows in Japanese, and like I'm not a massive TV person, I would rather do other things with my time, but as it happens, my daughter is like just got really, really into Japanese TV dramas, and so I've been watching all these things with her. And I got to say, I found some cool stuff. I found some really fun stuff, and just the fact that it's now, like, it's something that I can actually enjoy means I'm showing up as a slightly different person, right? And language is going in as a result. I've got these like funny little Japanese phrases. Like just yesterday, I was watching this show where a guy was saying this phrase in Japanese, which even the other Japanese people in the show didn't quite understand. And it went, wakaranai mono o wakatte inai to wakaranai mono wa wakarimasen. I think that's right. Wakaranai mono o wakatte inai to wakaranai mono wa wakaranai. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. Let me try that one more time. Wakaranai mono wakatte nai to wakaranai mono wa wakarimasen. That's it. Yeah. Basically, if you don't know what you don't know, then you will never know it. This is a complete tangent. But point was it's just so random that I would never have sat down and tried to learn this thing before. But it came as a result of doing something that I actually found fun. Okay. And so how can you do this in this situation? I want you to think about what motivates you most deeply and how you can potentially wrap language learning into this. So for me personally, it is people. I love speaking with people, and it's the people that motivate me. So if I can make friends in the language that I have to learn, then I am going to be far more motivated to actually study. Stuff is going to sink in. I'm going to be open to learning things much more because that happens, right? So I am naturally disposed to going out and putting myself in situations where I'm going to meet people, whether that's language exchanges, whether that's going to, I don't know, some Cuban salsa thing where I'm going to meet Spanish speakers, whatever it is. I know that the people themselves, if I can meet people that I like, there's going to be a knock-on effect where I like the language more and I'm more intrinsically motivated, right? So what is it for you? What is the thing that you know in your life as a person really, really lights you up? Whatever that is, whether it's books, whether it's TV, whether it's people, whether it's study, whatever it is, use that as your starting point to start to do some of that in the language. Because that really maximizes your chances of fusing together the language with the thing that you actually enjoy. And like I said before, if we can just find this tipping point where you start to do the thing that you really enjoy in the language, you can start to change this motivation very, very quickly. The next thing is to really think about the study time or the time that you have available, and making sure that you are maximizing the time that doesn't really matter to you for language learning, right? So if you are driving and you're just listening to random stuff on the radio, if you're in the gym and you're listening to nothing in particular, if you're just zoning out in front of the TV, this is stuff that presumably does not matter to you. Whatever's happening in that situation, like it could be something else, you don't really care. So use that time for exposure to the language, right? That's when you can be listening to podcasts, when you can be watching stuff on TV in the language. When it's very low stakes, unimportant stuff for you, use that time, because it's like you get that exposure for free and it doesn't have to feel like studying. The next thing I would do is try to define for you what and this is horrible Tim Ferriss-y type language, but what is the minimum effective dose of study that you can do every day that's going to help you learn that you can stomach. For example, if you knew that 30 minutes a day of reading got you your biggest bang for your buck, and you knew that with 30 minutes a day of reading, like you made reliable progress, and you don't enjoy it, and you don't want to do it, but you can hold your nose and sit down and read for 30 minutes a day, first thing in the morning, get it out the way, because at least then you know that you have brought some discipline to the small things, and that then allows you to get some freedom in the bigger things, because you are actually doing the thing that you know is going to help, right? So define what that minimum effective dose is. Is it 30 minutes of sit-down study? Is it like, God forbid, 5 minutes on Duolingo? Don't do that. That's not going to do anything for you at all. Is it half an hour of reading my short story books? Whatever it may be, think back over your language learning. What is the most effective activity that you know that you can be doing? Schedule that in and do it every day, even if it's through gritted teeth, because at least then you know that you can, it's like going to the gym, right? You know you can bring some discipline to the situation, but at least you're getting results. And if you're getting results, well, that can be self-motivating. The next thing I highly recommend you do is to seek external accountability. I naturally, most of the time, do not want to go to the gym, right? I wish I was, but I'm not the guy that wakes up at 6 in the morning and is like, get me to the gym as soon as possible. It doesn't happen. So what do? I have a personal trainer. And I'm very lucky I have a personal trainer in the next village from where I live. He's very affordable, really great guy. I go and see him twice a week. And as a result, I go to the gym twice a week and I lift heavy weights and I move a lot, and it's great. I would not go were it not for the fact that every Tuesday and Friday at 1 p.m. he's there waiting for me, right? Because I'm much more accountable to other people than I am to myself. So I go there, and as a result, I do exercise and I'm in a healthier state than I would otherwise be, right? That's because I use external accountability. How can you use external accountability to force yourself to study even when you don't want to? The classic way of doing this is with teachers. If you book a language lesson every Friday at 5 p.m., then you're going to turn up for it most likely, especially because you paid for it, right? You can book lessons. Our friends at Lingua Talk, they have great teachers, but you doesn't have to be a teacher. You could arrange a language exchange, and you turn up once a week for the language exchange, spend half the time speaking in one language, half the time speaking in the other. And again, because you've arranged to meet that person at that time, you will probably go and you will probably do it, right? Whatever that external accountability looks like to you, like joining up to a group class, going to the gym with a friend who speaks that, whatever it is, like put the time in the diary, make it regular, and that is going to force you to do it even when you don't want to. Motivation, I find, is a very fickle thing. If we allow ourselves to wallow in it, we can drum it up into becoming the biggest thing in the world. But it's also been my experience that more often than not, we can flick a switch in our brain, and the thing that we thought was horrible and depressing and demotivating actually isn't, if we just get on with it and we just find the little psychological hack. And the last thing I really want you to understand is that language learning, even though it takes time, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And if you can bring discipline to studying now in the short term, there will come a day when the language is just effortless and normal for you, and you can interact in that language. It's neither good nor bad. It is like emotion agnostic. It just is. And you can interact in your daily life with that language without having to worry about it being unpleasurable or unsatisfying or whatever it may be. Like, that day will come. And so really, I think this is about deciding for yourself, how do I want to spend my days? Do I want to spend my days with this being a huge cloud hanging over my head? Or do I want to bring some discipline to the situation, get it done, and get to a point where all of this stuff is over and then I can just use this language effortlessly? I think by this point you probably get how I focus on this. I'm a bit of a taskmaster with myself. I've just noticed that whenever I allow myself to wallow in emotions and these negative feelings, like nothing good comes from it. And there's so often a better reality on the other side of the coin. And if you can just figure out how to flip it, you'll be in a better place. You might like to start though with some great TV or podcasts. So download my binge-worthy resources cheat sheet. It's going to give you some great options to start whatever language you're learning. It's going to give you some great TV to watch. That alone might motivate you to start taking it all a little bit more seriously, to bring some joy to the process. So I hope that's helpful in some way. I hope this wasn't too lectury, but I've tried to give you kind of an honest take because I think it is a tricky situation, but it's within your control and you are the master of your own destiny at the end of the day. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you back in the next episode of the podcast.